I was the youngest of 5 children. My name is Jamie. And when I was 2 years old, my mother chose to keep me. Not out of love. Not because she felt any real connection to me. She kept me so she could prove to others that she didn't give them all away. For the church. For the neighbors. For that tear-streaked image of a woman who had suffered, but still clung to hope. That's all I was, her evidence. I didn't learn the truth right away. By the time I was 3, I already knew there was no dad around, but I didn't ask why. At 5, I began to notice other moms didn't disappear for days. At 6, I watched her slam the door in the face of a social worker and scream that she was doing everything she could. But it wasn't until later that I began to truly understand. We lived in an old house that belonged to her uncle, Mr. Howard. He was a bitter, silent war vet who spoke mostly through grunts and the sound of beer bottles clinking. He had one condition. My mom could stay only if she brought one child. "I'm not feeding a whole litter of your mistakes," he told her. So she picked the youngest. The quietest. "You're the only one still salvageable," she slurred once when she was drunk. I didn't know anything about my siblings until I was 11. I overheard a conversation between my mom and a church lady, Mrs. Handler, who sometimes dropped off groceries and used clothes. My mom said, "At least I kept one. Let them see I'm not like that Lori Jenkins who gave all hers up." They both laughed. I stood under the stairs, shaking silently. She paraded me at church on holidays. Dressed me up, tied my hair in ribbons, taught me not to speak unless spoken to. The women praised her. Poor Amanda. Raising her child all alone. She soaked it in. The role of the suffering single mom suited her. At home, though, she was angry. Exhausted. Perpetually reeking of wine and bitterness. When I was 13, I stumbled on a cardboard box in her closet while searching for a flashlight. It was sealed with old tape, the edges worn. Inside, letters, photos. Kids. One girl looked a little like me. A boy with freckles. Another girl with a crooked smile. 4 names written in black marker. Kelly, Scott, Brianna, Thomas. All with my last name. On the back of one photo, Scott, age 4, 2003. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing I wasn't alone. There were 4 others. For she gave away. I didn't ask questions. Not yet. I was scared. But I knew from that moment, I was only kept as her prop. I first saw one of them when I was 16. He found me. His name was Thomas, and he was 22. He stood outside our house, leaning against a beat-up white Chevy. I was walking to the store when he said, "Are you Jamie?" I nodded. He said, "I'm your brother." I ran. Straight back into the house, locking the door behind me. Mom was still asleep. When she woke up, I told her someone had come. When I mentioned his name, her face went cold. She said, "If you ever see them again, don't talk. Don't listen. They only want trouble." But Thomas didn't go away. He left a letter for me in the mailbox. It had pictures, all 5 of us. And stories. Kelly lived in Iowa with a foster family. Scott was in a group home in Minnesota. Brianna had run from her foster mom at 13 and ended up in juvenile detention. Thomas had found all of them. They all knew about me. They were waiting. I started writing him back secretly. I dropped letters in the library's old postal box. He'd respond with more photos, more stories. He told me how Brianna drew constantly. How Scott had taught himself to play guitar. I started hating my mother even more. When I turned 17, I ran away. Packed a backpack and walked out. Thomas picked me up, drove me to Kelly's place. Her foster family welcomed me. She had a room, a piano, and a golden retriever named Ellie. For the first time, I had a normal breakfast. No screaming. No threats. But it wasn't over. A week later, our mother showed up. Not alone. She brought 2 men. One was her boyfriend, the other a lawyer. They barged into Kelly's house, shouting that I'd been kidnapped. That I was a minor taken against my will. That she was my legal guardian and had rights. It was terrifying. Kelly cried. Thomas wouldn't let go of my hand. The police had to be called. That's when I told them everything. For the first time in my life, I said it all. To the officer. To the department. About years of neglect. About the screaming, the drinking, the bruises she left. About how she shut out the social worker. About the photos. About the lies. They ran a background check. Turns out she had lost guardianship a year ago. She just never told anyone. She hadn't filed any paperwork. Hadn't gone to court. I had been technically unaccompanied for 12 months. And nobody knew. She just faked it all. They arrested her. I saw her handcuffed and hauled away. For once, she didn't have a bottle in her hand. And for once, I felt nothing. I stayed with Kelly. Later, Scott invited us to his apartment. He was in college, studying to be a social worker. Brianna showed up 2 months later, carrying her sketchbooks, drawings dedicated to my baby sister. For the first time ever, we were all together. Like we were supposed to be. But the worst part wasn't how she gave us all away. It was that she never wanted us back. She wanted the image. The appearance. She didn't fight for me because she loved me. She fought because she didn't want people to see that, in the end, she was alone. Privacy didn't exist in my house. Not in the bathroom, not in my room, not even in my thoughts, because my mother always found a way to twist them. From the moment I could talk, she taught me not to speak. Not out loud. Not about what happened in our home. I wasn't raised like a child. I was managed like a PR project. My mom, Amanda, didn't care about me as a person. She cared that I looked good, that I didn't make her look bad. My grades had to be perfect. My clothes clean. My hair brushed, my shoes shined, my lunchbox full. She didn't check if I'd eaten. She checked if teachers would notice if I hadn't. At home, she went through everything. Drawers, notebooks, even the trash. One time when I was 9, I'd torn out a page from a journal and thrown it away. It had one sentence, "I hate it here." She found it the same night, dragged me into the living room, shoved the crumpled paper in my face and hissed, "Do you know what people would say if they read this? Do you have any idea what that would do to me?" She never said what that would do to you. That didn't matter. My room had no door from age 10. She said doors were for kids who earned them. You don't need secrets. Secrets grow mold, she told me. So she unhinged it one day while I was at school. Just removed it, leaned it against the garage wall. It never came back. After that, changing clothes was a race against time, hoping she didn't come up the stairs. The house had rules. Too many to remember, and they changed constantly. What was allowed one week became punishable the next. I once left a spoon in the sink she didn't notice until 11 p.m. She stormed into my room, flipped my laundry basket, yanked my desk drawer out, and dumped it on the floor. "You think you can disrespect my house?" she shouted. I didn't say a word. If I cried, she'd accuse me of manipulating her. If I stayed still, she'd say I was mocking her. And school? That was a theater stage. I was the perfect daughter. Neat handwriting. Raised hand. Eye contact. When parent-teacher conferences came around, Amanda wore long sleeves, fake pearls, and a smile like she was running for office. She'd start crying halfway through. Every time. "She's all I've got," she'd sob. "I'm trying so hard. But sometimes I worry I'm not enough for her." Teachers would nod sympathetically, hand her tissues, tell me how lucky I was to have such a devoted mother. They never asked why my smile disappeared the second we got in the car. She got off on the sympathy. It was currency to her. Attention made her feel powerful, and my performance, my grades, my behavior, was her trophy. I had no friends over. Ever. Not once. "I don't need strangers judging me," she'd snap. If someone from school asked to hang out, I'd lie. "We're busy. My mom's working. We're going out of town." No one ever came to the house. Amanda said people were nosy, that they'd twist what they saw. Instead, there was Aunt Lorraine. She wasn't really my aunt, just one of Amanda's few acquaintances. Lorraine was huge, loud, smelled like menthols, and laughed with her whole body. She came over every other Sunday, drank cheap wine with Amanda, and talked about how damn ungrateful kids are nowadays. One time, I came downstairs with a math textbook in my hand. Lorraine looked at me and said, "You ever think about what your mama gave up for you? She could have had her own life. A man. Travel. But she stayed for you." Amanda nodded like she was accepting an award. I turned around and went back upstairs. It didn't matter that none of it was true. She didn't stay for me. She stayed for appearances. She loved to remind me that everything I had was because of her. "Clothes, school, toothbrush, I pay for all of it," she'd hiss. "I don't owe you comfort." One night, when I was 12, I asked if we could repaint my room. The wallpaper was peeling, and there were brown water stains from a leak in the ceiling. She stared at me, took a drag from her cigarette, and said, "Why? So you can pretend this isn't your life? Learn to live in your skin." Control wasn't just physical. It was emotional. She'd pretend to be supportive just long enough to lower my guard. One year, I got second place in a science fair. She hugged me in front of the principal, said she was proud. But as soon as we got home, she tossed the certificate on the table. "Second place? Don't come bragging until you win." But the worst was when she'd force fake apologies. If I ever expressed frustration, a sigh, a frown, anything, she'd say I was spoiled, disrespectful, too big for my britches. And then she'd make me sit at the kitchen table, write a handwritten apology to her for my attitude. I had to read it out loud. If I sounded insincere, she'd rip it in half and make me start over. Once, she made me rewrite the same apology 11 times. Because I didn't look sorry enough. Then there was Mr. Boone, the guidance counselor at school. I tried to tell him once. Not everything. Just that things were hard at home. That I didn't feel safe. He said I should be grateful I had a roof over my head. "Some kids have it worse, Jamie. Try focusing on the good." That was the last time I tried. She kept track of everything. Notes from teachers. Test scores. Times I was late. Every slip-up, no matter how small, was a threat to her reputation. Once I forgot my lunch. She came to the school during 4th period. Walked into my class, threw the lunchbox on my desk, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "What kind of mother would I be if I let my daughter starve herself out of laziness?" I was 13. The punishment for that mistake was to clean the entire house that weekend. Walls, baseboards, ceiling fans. And I wasn't allowed to eat until it was done. Amanda also kept a folder labeled documentation in the drawer of her bedroom dresser. I found it once while she was in the bath. It was full of photos of me, smiling, playing piano, holding certificates, letters from teachers, drawings I'd made in elementary school. She kept it like a portfolio. Something to show the world, to say, "See? I'm a good mom." But nothing in that folder showed the bruises on my back. or the pages she'd ripped from my diary, or at the time she locked me out in the rain because I didn't say thank you after dinner. She called those nights lessons in humility. And then there was the worst night of all, the night with the scissors. I was 14. She had found a crumpled sheet of notebook paper in my backpack. I'd written down things I wanted: to sleep with the door locked, to eat in peace, to feel normal. She read it word for word, called me downstairs, sat me at the table, and put a pair of scissors in front of me. "If you don't like your life, why don't you just cut yourself out of it?" she said calmly, like she was offering me tea. "Go ahead. Do it. That's what kids like you do, right? Want pity?" I didn't touch the scissors. I couldn't even breathe. Eventually, she picked them up and threw them across the room. Then she walked away. After that, something in me went cold. I stopped reacting. I did what I was told. I studied. I smiled at school. I kept my face blank at home. I lived like a ghost. Because that's what she needed me to be. Quiet, obedient, proof of her suffering and strength. And even though people praised her, even though they clapped for her at church and told her she was a warrior, I knew the truth. Behind the curtain, she was a warden, and I was her captive. And the most terrifying part was that, to everyone else, it looked like love. I was 21 and barely holding things together. I just moved into a crappy 2-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaners on East Lake Street. It smelled like burnt starch and mothballs 24/7, but it was mine. I worked nights at a warehouse loading trucks and spent the rest of my time either sleeping or zoning out in front of my ancient TV. I didn't talk to my mother. I barely talked to anyone. My siblings, the ones I'd reconnected with, were scattered across the country, living their own lives. We texted sometimes. Called maybe once a month. I thought I knew the full extent of what Amanda had done. I thought I had the entire map of her damage laid out, all the kids she discarded, all the lies she built like concrete walls. I thought the nightmare was over. And then I got a Facebook message from a woman I'd never heard of. Her name was Kenda Monroe. She looked to be in her mid to late 20s in her profile photo. Sharp cheekbones. Curly dark hair. A half smile that looked cautious. The message was short. "Hi. I know this is random, and I'm sorry to bother you, but I think we might be related. I believe we have the same mother. Her name is Amanda." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't respond at first. I read it over and over until the words blurred. My chest tightened. There was no way. No way she could have had more kids. Was that even possible? But then again, it was Amanda. I messaged her back the next day. Carefully. I asked what she knew, how she found me. She replied almost immediately. Said she'd done one of those DNA kits and matched with a distant cousin who was also related to someone with my name. She traced that back, found my Facebook. Started digging. We exchanged a few more messages. And then she sent a photo. It was a woman holding a baby in a hospital room. Amanda. Younger, thinner, her face pale and oily. But unmistakable. Her arm around a newborn wrapped in a pink blanket. The date in the corner said June 6, 1994. "I'm the baby," Kenda wrote. She gave me up 2 days later. My stomach flipped. That made her 6 years older than me. She asked if we could talk on the phone. I said yes. That night we spoke for 2 hours. Kenda had been adopted by a white family in Ohio. Grew up in the suburbs, private school, piano lessons, summer camp. But it wasn't perfect. Her adoptive mother was distant, always worried about appearances. Her father traveled for work and treated her like a doll he could pose in photos. They never talked about her biological parents. She didn't even know Amanda's name until she turned 26 and started digging into her records. She'd contacted the hospital where she was born. Paid for access to sealed documents. It took her months to get through the red tape. But eventually she got a name. Amanda Lynn Garrett. And once she had that, everything started falling into place. She was careful. She didn't want to scare me off. Said she understood if I wanted nothing to do with her. But I didn't feel scared. I felt electrified. There was someone else. Someone who understood. We arranged to meet the next weekend in Chicago. Neutral ground. I barely slept the night before. I wore 3 different outfits before settling on jeans and a jacket. When I got to the cafe, I spotted her right away, sitting in the corner booth, clutching a mug like a lifeline. She stood up when she saw me. We both hesitated, then hugged. It was strange. Like hugging a memory I didn't know I had. We spent the whole day talking. Everything spilled out. Our lives, our homes, our mothers. The similarities. The differences. I told her about the folder Amanda kept with all my proof of success. Kenda laughed, a bitter, sharp laugh, and said her adoptive mother kept something similar. Only hers was all about what she did for me, not what I did for her. When I got back to my apartment that night, I cried harder than I had in years. A few weeks passed. We kept in touch. Then one day she messaged me, "I think there's another one." His name was Bryson. 25. From Georgia. She'd matched with him on the same DNA site. He'd reached out first, asking if she knew anything about the Garrett family. Said he'd been adopted through a closed process, raised by a preacher and his wife. Very religious household. Strict. The kind of place where feelings were a liability. Kenda looped me in. We set up a group call. Bryson was quiet at first. Cautious. You could hear it in his voice. That flat, measured tone people use when they've been punished for saying too much. He told us his adoptive father used to hit him with a belt for disrespect. that the Bible was a weapon in their house. When he asked about his birth mother at 16, his father slapped him so hard his ear rang for days. He didn't know her name until recently. A friend had given him an old laptop. On a whim, he signed up for the DNA kit. Got his results a month later. And there we were. 3 of us now. And then came Michaela. 23. Found me through Facebook this time. Her message was frantic, like it had been typed through shaking fingers. Is your mother's name Amanda Garrett? I think you might be my sister. I need to talk to you. We jumped on a call that night. Michaela was emotional. Raw. She'd grown up in the foster system, bounced between homes. She'd been in 11 different placements by the time she was 18. Abused in 4. Neglected in most. She remembered Amanda. Barely. Said she had a flash of a screaming woman throwing dishes. A dark hallway. A nightlight shaped like a moon. That was it. She'd been taken by CPS at age 3. Never adopted. A ward of the state. 4 of us. All abandoned. All dumped into different corners of the world like broken pieces of something Amanda didn't want to finish. We started meeting on Zoom every Sunday. Called it the Ruins. Dark humor. We needed it. We joked about forming a band. The Forgotten 4. Kenda was the leader. Assertive, witty, kept everyone on track. Bryson opened up slowly. He had a deep voice and a dry sense of humor. Michaela was fire. Always moving. Always venting, but vulnerable underneath. We talked about doing a meetup. All of us together. And then Kenda dropped a bomb. I found her. We all fell silent. I found Amanda. She's alive. She lives in Spokane. I found a public record. She's been working under a different last name, Heller. Amanda Heller. She teaches crafting classes at a senior center. Has a little Etsy shop. Selling hand-painted wine glasses. I didn't know what to say. I felt the air drain out of my lungs. She's acting like none of us exist, Michaela said, her voice tight. Just out here living her little boho Pinterest life? She's remarried, Kenda added. To a guy named Dale. He doesn't know. There's no mention of us anywhere. No kids on her Facebook. Just pictures of her stupid cat and her loving husband. Bryson didn't say anything for a while. Then finally, we should go. What? Visit her? I asked. No. Not visit. Just be seen. We planned it for 3 weeks later. Flew out one by one. Booked rooms in the same hotel. The night before, we met at a cheap diner off the highway. The waitress thought we were a wedding party. We didn't correct her. The next morning, we went to the community center where Amanda taught. She had a class every Saturday. Paint. Sip with Amanda. We waited until the session was over. She walked out around 11:45. Gray streaks in her hair. Flowing cardigan. Big sunglasses. She looked happy. Like the person she always pretended to be. She didn't see us until she was at her car. 4 of us. Standing in a row. She froze. Her mouth opened. Maybe to speak, maybe to scream. But nothing came out. I stepped forward. Hi, Mom. She blinked. Her face went pale. Then red. Then pale again. Kenda spoke next. You left us all. Every single one. Did you think we'd never find each other? Amanda said nothing. Her fingers fumbled for her keys. Bryson took a step forward. You don't get to disappear. You don't get to rewrite the past. Still nothing. And then Michaela. 11 foster homes, Amanda. 4 abuse reports. 3 therapists. 1 suicide attempt. Wanna guess who caused that? Amanda finally spoke. I didn't know. You did know, I said. You just didn't care. She didn't deny it. She got in her car and drove away. We stood there for a long time after she left. None of us said anything. Then Michaela started crying. And we all did. We weren't there for revenge. We were there for each other. Because now we knew. We were never crazy. Never weak. We were discarded, yes. But not broken. And we had each other now. Even if that came too late. I didn't plan to become an investigator. I wasn't trained. I didn't know what the hell I was doing at first. But by the time we confronted Amanda in Spokane, by the time she peeled off in that car like a coward, I knew I wasn't going to be able to just let it go. Not again. Not after what she did to all of us. Not after how easily she looked through me like I was a ghost. Like I was something she thought she'd flushed out of her life years ago. So I started digging. At first just out of spite. But it grew into something bigger, something colder, more methodical. Like a sickness I couldn't cure unless I exposed every piece of her lies. I didn't tell the others. Not yet. I needed to know what I was dealing with. The first thing I did was request my own case file from Family Services. It wasn't easy. Most of the documents were sealed, and I had to go through 2 different departments just to get a redacted version. It took 6 weeks and about 30 phone calls. When it finally arrived, it was almost 300 pages thick. I read every single page. I learned that Amanda was investigated multiple times between 1997 and 2008. There were anonymous reports, some clearly from teachers or neighbors, about neglect, verbal abuse, suspected substance use, and possible emotional endangerment. In one note, a school counselor reported that I came to class wearing clothes 2 sizes too small and with bruising visible on upper arms. The report was dismissed due to lack of photographic evidence and uncorroborated testimony. I was 11. The file also contained copies of petitions Amanda had filed, letters she wrote to court officials, insisting she was a changed woman and guided by Christ. She attached statements from Pastor Glenn Marwick, a local Pentecostal preacher, and one from a church group called Shepherd's Bloom. That's where things started to make sense. I remembered Shepherd's Bloom, a bunch of middle-aged women in long skirts and oversized crucifixes who used to visit our house when I was a kid. They brought casseroles and prayed over me. I always thought they were just church ladies. But it turns out Amanda had used them as character witnesses. So I went to visit them. The group was still active. Their headquarters was a modest ranch house on the edge of town, painted mint green with a giant wooden cross on the lawn. I knocked on the door one Saturday morning, half expecting them to slam it in my face. Instead, a tall woman with pale hair and too much foundation answered. Her name was Colleen West. "I'm Amanda Garrett's daughter," I said. She blinked, then smiled. "Jamie." I nodded. Her smile vanished. They invited me in. There were 3 of them, Colleen, a woman named Marcia Jean, and another called Patty. I sat with them in a sunroom that smelled like lemon polish and burnt coffee. I didn't ask questions right away. I waited for them to speak. "We didn't know she had more than one child," Patty said softly. That made my skin crawl. "She didn't just have one," I said. "She had 8. First she gave up through the system. 3 more we're still trying to locate. I'm the one she kept, for appearances." They didn't say anything for a long time. Then Colleen got up, left the room, and came back with a binder. "She used to write devotions for our newsletter," she said. "She dropped them off once a month. Said they helped her heal." She handed it to me. Inside were laminated pages with titles like Motherhood as Redemption, Grace Through the Eyes of a Child, and Saved from Myself. They were dripping with lies, paragraphs about how she reclaimed her life after rescuing her daughter from the flames of sin. I scanned the pages, jaw clenched. My name appeared dozens of times. "She is proof that Christ is real," one entry read. "Every time I hear her laughter, I remember what the Lord did for me." I felt like throwing up. "I'm sorry," Colleen said. "We didn't know. We really didn't. We thought she was honest." I took photos of everything. I scanned the newsletter. I even asked for copies of anything else they had. Patty hesitated, then went into the back and returned with a box. "These are her letters. The ones she sent us personally. From 2000 to 2009. That was the jackpot." I thanked them and left. Back home, I read every letter. Some were 2 pages long. Others 10 or 12. In them, Amanda crafted an entire persona. A broken woman saved by divine intervention, struggling to raise her miracle child against all odds. In one letter, she described giving up her other children because she lacked the tools to keep them from Satan. In another, she wrote, "The Lord told me I must be refined in fire. He said, keep the one who shows you grace." So I kept Jamie. She made herself into a martyr. A savior. A prophet. I wanted to scream. But instead, I got organized. I used the letters to map out her lies. Each time she mentioned a date, I matched it against court records, school records, and state databases. I made a timeline. I started building a case, not for court, but for truth. Then I found something I hadn't expected. Inside the box of letters was a small leather-bound diary. It was different from the others, not for public eyes. It had no verses, no prayers, no scripture. Just rage. Her first entry was dated April 1992, the year my half-sister Kenda was born. She wrote about being pregnant and alone. About how disgusting the thing inside her felt. She referred to the baby as the parasite. She wrote, "It's not mine. It's his. He left, and I don't owe him anything." Then 2 entries later, gave her up today. Didn't cry. Felt clean after. Entry after entry, she documented every pregnancy, every lie, every child she gave up. She named some of the fathers, first names only. Most were men she met through church groups or AA meetings. She described them as weak, needy, stupid. She wrote about social workers as roaches and said CPS existed to punish women who speak truth. She bragged about manipulating court-appointed therapists. And then I found this. Keeping Jamie. She's blank. Clean. Small enough to mold. She'll be the version of me I can parade. I stared at that page for an hour. Then I took the diary and everything else, the letters, the newsletters, my DNA report, and my birth records, and locked them in a fireproof box in my closet. But I wasn't done. Next, I tracked down Pastor Glenn Marwick, the one who signed off on Amanda's petitions back in the early 2000s. He was still alive. Still preaching. He led a mid-sized church in Redcliffe called Glory River Fellowship. I showed up one Sunday under a fake name, sat through the whole service, watched him deliver a sermon about forgiveness and grace with the enthusiasm of a salesman on commission. Afterward, I approached him. "Todd Garrett's daughter," I said. He paled. "Todd was my grandfather," I added. "Amanda's uncle." He cleared his throat. "How can I help you, young lady?" "She used you," I said. "And I think you know that." He didn't deny it. "She came to me with tears," he said finally. "Said she needed redemption. Said she wanted to raise her child in Christ. She wanted an audience," I said. "She used me as a costume." He didn't argue. I left him with a copy of one of her diary entries. And then I walked out of the church forever. I thought about going public. Telling the world what she really was. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed the others to know first. So I flew to see Michaela. I brought everything. Scanned copies of the diaries, the letters, the court reports. We sat in her tiny apartment eating takeout while I told her the whole story. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stared at the evidence like it was radioactive. She planned this, she said. The entire thing. She planned to keep you as a trophy. Yeah, I said. And she made me feel guilty for breathing. We called Bryson. Then Kenda. We made a shared folder. We uploaded everything. And for the first time, we understood the full scope of what she'd done. She didn't just abandon us. She built a kingdom on our absence. And she crowned herself a queen of redemption. With my face as the proof. There's a moment after the truth is in your hands when you realize it's not enough to know. It has to be shown. Spoken. Written. Screamed if necessary. What my mother did. What she built and manipulated and sold. It wasn't just private trauma. It was public fiction. And I couldn't stomach the idea that she was still being praised for it. So we published the truth. It started with a group text between me, Kenda, Bryson, and Michaela. I wrote, "We need to go public. Not with our names, but with everything else." Kenda called within minutes. "You're serious?" "Yes," I said. "It's not just about her lying. She used us. She manipulated churches, donors, strangers for sympathy. There are people who still believe she's a reformed, God-fearing mother who sacrificed everything for her one daughter. That image hurts." Bryson added quietly, "It's time." Michaela was already typing furiously. She replied with, "What's the name of her blog again?" "Raising Grace," I said. Michaela groaned. "She called it that? Like, we're all just stains under the rug, but Jamie was her Grace project?" "Exactly that." We met over Zoom that night. Spent hours outlining what we wanted to include. The facts. The timeline. Our own voices. We didn't want it to sound like revenge. We wanted it to be impossible to deny. So we agreed on two things. It would be anonymous, and it would be backed with receipts. We launched the blog under the title, "The Fruit of Her Lies." It had no names. No locations. But we detailed everything, from Amanda's first known pregnancy in 1992 to her latest rebranding in Spokane as Amanda Heller, spiritual mother and Christian lifestyle blogger. We included scanned diary entries, names blurred, her letters to Shepherd's Bloom, church petitions, and even audio recordings from voicemail messages she'd left me during my teen years, screaming, crying, manipulating. We published our stories in 4 separate sections. Kenda wrote about being adopted into a cold household where she was expected to perform gratitude, but never allowed to feel loss. She shared the photo, Amanda in the hospital, cradling her like a photo prop. Bryson talked about being beaten with a belt for questioning his origin, about how he learned to flinch every time someone said God's plan. Michaela's post was the longest and hardest to read. 11 foster homes. 3 confirmed cases of abuse. A suicide attempt at 16 that was written off as teen mood swings. She ended it with a sentence I'll never forget. "She erased me before I could speak my name." My section detailed how Amanda kept me not out of love, but to serve as her proof. How she built her identity as a born-again mother on my compliance. I included screenshots of her blog entries describing me as her daily blessing, alongside notes from her diaries calling me the blank canvas. We cross-referenced every claim with court records, public reports, or visual evidence. Every post was footnoted like an academic paper. The final piece was a chronological timeline titled, "What She Told the Church versus What Actually Happened." We launched it on a Friday night. By Sunday morning, it had 3,000 views. By the end of the week, it was over 100,000. It blew up faster than we were prepared for. A few Christian bloggers, mostly women who had followed Amanda's Raising Grace blog, started asking questions. One anonymous Twitter user broke down our timeline into a thread that went viral. Comments flooded in. "She stole my donation money. I hosted her at our women's conference. She used our platform to sell her testimony as a digital download for $12.99. I remember her talking about her daughter like she was a miracle. I feel sick." Then came the fallout. Raising Grace lost its top sponsor, a Christian apparel brand called Rooted Modest. Their spokesperson posted a statement. "We were unaware of the deeply troubling allegations and will be terminating all sponsorship relationships immediately." Then the Women's Restoration Network, a nonprofit that had once awarded Amanda a Mother in Christ plaque, removed her from their speakers page. They deleted every photo of her from their website within hours of the blog reaching 300,000 views. We sat back and watched as her world unraveled. It wasn't just digital. People from her church community in Spokane Glory River started asking questions too. We got emails through the contact form. One stood out. "I'm a volunteer at Amanda's local ministry. I don't know who you are, but I believe you. I'm so sorry she did this to you. Please let me know how I can help." Another came from a woman named Karina Wilson. She was the wife of one of Amanda's discipleship mentors and had hosted her in her home during a women's retreat. Karina had 2 kids, one adopted. She wrote, "I gave her my couch, my trust. She told me her daughter was the only light she had in her life. She never mentioned the others. Never. How could she?" By the 2nd week, Amanda deleted her Instagram account. By the 3rd, Raising Grace was offline. The domain rerouted to an error message. Her Etsy shop disappeared too. But the most satisfying moment came when I got a forwarded email from a local Spokane newsletter called Faith Weekly. The subject line, Amanda Heller drops out of Women of Faith keynote. The message said she had chosen to step away from public ministry to focus on private spiritual growth, which is PR speak for, she got caught and ran. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer either. I just stared at the screen until it blurred. For the first time in years, I felt still. Then she tried to reach me. She emailed me. From a new account. Subject, you made your point. The message read, I hope you're happy. I lost everything. Do you know what it's like to be abandoned by people you trusted? I do know. I guess I should thank you for teaching me what it feels like. I didn't respond. She called from an unknown number 3 days later. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. Voicemail after voicemail filled with sniffling, half-formed apologies, and bitterness when I didn't call back. Eventually, she left one that said, you were supposed to be the good one. That was the last straw. I texted her. One sentence, you used me. We're done. Then I blocked her. Email. Phone. Socials. All of it. She tried reaching out to Bryson and Michaela too. Left a handwritten letter on Ken's old apartment door. But it was too late. None of us replied. We held one last Zoom call. Just the 4 of us. We didn't talk about the blog. We didn't need to. We knew what it meant. Instead, we talked about real things. Normal things. Bryson was taking cooking classes. Michaela was starting therapy again. Kenda was engaged. And I told them the truth. I felt lighter. For the first time, I wasn't just Amanda's blank canvas. I was me. Not her exhibit. Not her redemption arc. Not her puppet. Me. And she had no part in it anymore. I thought things had already reached their limit. After we posted the anonymous blog and Amanda's online image collapsed, I figured she'd slink back into obscurity. She lost her followers, her Christian mommy brand, and whatever delusional credibility she had built. That should have been the end. But then I met Lydia Mercer. She was a freelance investigative journalist, known for digging into stories about spiritual abuse, faith-based fraud, and church washing, a term she coined for people who use Christianity to clean up their reputations. She had covered everything from embezzling pastors to megachurches that hid sexual abuse cases. One morning, I got a message from her via the contact form on our anonymous blog. It was short. I'm working on a long-form story. I know who your mother is. I believe you. And I can prove more. Will you talk to me? I didn't reply for a full day. I sent it to Kenda first. She was cautious but curious. Bryson was silent, as usual. Michaela texted back, what's her vibe? So I got on a call with Lydia. And from the first 10 minutes, I knew she was legit. She had already compiled public records we hadn't even seen. Nonprofit tax forms, event permits, bank statements filed with the IRS, even audio clips from Amanda's old Christian podcast, Grace Notes. She spoke with a calm, clipped rhythm. The kind of person who didn't just chase truth. She built it piece by piece. I'm not interested in moral outrage, she told me. I care about facts, receipts, and naming what people try to hide. Your mother isn't just a manipulator. She's a fraud. That word hit me like a jolt. Fraud. We agreed to meet in person 2 weeks later in Seattle. Lydia was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with short dark hair, combat boots, and a messenger bag filled with color-coded folders. She handed me a USB drive with everything she'd gathered. There's more here than emotional damage, she said. There's financial crime. Possibly felony level. Back in my apartment, I opened the drive. And I felt my stomach twist. Amanda hadn't just lied. She'd profited. There were donation pages linked to her blog. 5 separate GoFundMe accounts. All with different titles, Help Amanda Teach Christian Motherhood, Support the Raising Grace Conference Tour, Give One Mom a Chance, and more. In total, Lydia had traced over $72,000 raised in small donations over 4 years, supposedly for events that never happened. There were receipts, some from Amanda's PayPal account, some scraped from her Square dashboard. She used the money for plane tickets to Hawaii and Arizona, spa packages, boutique hotel stays, a monthly payment on a leased white Lexus RX, custom furniture from an online retailer, even Botox injections, coded on invoices as dermal medical therapy. And then came the biggest shock. She had used part of the money to pay for a one-on-one mentorship package with an influencer pastor named Darla Rains, a $5,000 spiritual brand accelerator program. Darla was a name I recognized. She ran a massive Christian women's network online and had 3 million Instagram followers. Amanda had paid her for branding consultation, to polish her false redemption arc, to get invited to retreats, interviews, conferences. She wasn't just fooling strangers. She was investing in the lie. I called Lydia the next day and said, I'm in. Over the next 6 weeks, she interviewed all 4 of us, me, Kenda, Michaela, and Bryson. We spoke openly, this time on the record. We gave her real names, real documents, real photos. She also interviewed people from Amanda's old church, Glory River, former board members, her ex-boyfriend Dale, who had no idea about any of it, a woman named Erica Shin, who co-managed the blog and swore Amanda told her she was using donations to host free parenting workshops for underserved mothers. There were no workshops, Erica admitted in the article. Not one. She told me she was tired and overwhelmed, and I trusted her. Then Lydia filed Freedom of Information Act requests, dug deeper, contacted the IRS, cross-referenced tax IDs, She even tracked down the print vendor that was supposed to make Amanda's Raising Grace devotional books. The invoice showed it was paid for, but only 50 copies were ever printed. The rest of the money was reallocated. The final draft of the article was titled, "The Gospel According to Amanda: How Unchristian Blogger Built a Brand on Betrayal." And then it exploded. Published through The Lantern, an online outlet known for long-form investigative pieces, it went live on a Tuesday at 6 a.m. By 9 o'clock, it had 200,000 views. By noon, it was trending on X, formerly Twitter, under #RaisingGrift. The comments flooded in. "This is the most twisted story I've ever read. I donated to her. I sent $50 to help single moms. I feel sick. Fake workshops, fake faith, real fraud." She used Christianity like a scammer uses a fake badge. By day 2, Darla Reigns made a public statement. She posted a video on Instagram. "I was deceived by Amanda Heller. She lied about her family, her goals, and her intentions. I had no idea. I am severing all ties immediately." That same day, the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions opened an investigation. It turns out Amanda had failed to file nonprofit status properly. She'd funneled donations through a shell account and reported the income under a business name that no longer existed. That alone was enough to get her flagged. On day 3, local Spokane News picked up the story. Then a national outlet. Then cable news. My face was on the screen. My voice was in the podcasts. I sat in my apartment watching it all unfold, feeling nothing and everything at once. My mother wasn't just exposed now, she was undressed. Her entire empire was stripped to the bones. And then, finally came the warrant. Lydia texted me a photo of the court filing. Amanda was being charged with felony wire fraud and misappropriation of charitable funds. The sum, $72,893.52. It felt unreal. Even then. 2 days later, she was arrested. A blurry mugshot was posted online. Her face looked older. No makeup. Jaw tight. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. Reporters tried to contact us. News shows wanted exclusive interviews. Lydia handled the press inquiries. We agreed to make one joint statement. It read, "We are not seeking fame. We are not seeking revenge. We only wanted to stop the harm. Our mother used faith to exploit the vulnerable. She took your money, your sympathy, and your trust. She used our lives as a costume. Now she no longer controls the narrative." That was it. Amanda pled not guilty, of course. Hired a local lawyer, Donna Keene, who tried to paint her as a confused woman with trauma and poor judgment. But there were too many records. Too many bank statements. Too many screenshots. Even if she avoided prison, her image would never recover. And that was enough for me. The next time Lydia called, I thanked her. "I didn't just do it for the story," she said. "I did it because people like your mom count on silence. You didn't stay silent." No, I didn't. And I never will again. It started with a form. I was standing in line at the Department of Motor Vehicles, holding number C-112, the overhead speaker droning on with letters and numbers that didn't belong to me. My palms were damp, and the folder in my hand, filled with court paperwork, my birth certificate, and a notarized affidavit, felt like it weighed 100 pounds. When they called my number, I walked up and said the words I'd been thinking about for a year. "I'd like to change my legal last name." The woman behind the counter didn't look up. "Okay, what's your current last name?" "Garrett," I said. And even saying it made me feel sick. She handed me a new stack of forms. "And the new name?" I hesitated for a second. Then said, "Marrow." Not because it sounded nice. Not because it was easy. But because it meant something. The marrow is the part of the bone you can't see. The center of what makes you live. The deepest part of the body. Quiet and essential. That's what I wanted. Something that belonged to me and me alone. Jamie Marrow. I signed the form, paid the fee, and walked out into the sun. I didn't look back. After everything, the exposure, the fallout, the article, the trial, there was no going back anyway. I couldn't go to the grocery store in my old neighborhood without someone staring. I couldn't open social media without finding a message request from someone saying, "Thank you," or "How could she," or "I went through something like this too." So I moved in with Michaela. She was living in a 2-bedroom apartment above a bakery in Everett, Washington. It smelled like flour and cinnamon most days and damp drywall on others. Her place was tiny, but it had a real door on the bathroom and a roof that didn't leak. Already better than what I grew up in. Michaela had decorated her room with neon art, mismatched rugs, and loud vintage lamps she found at thrift stores. She insisted I take the bigger bedroom. "You spent your childhood trapped in a closet with no door," she said. "You've earned some space." We made it work. Took turns cooking and fighting over hot water. Laughed more than I ever expected. Sometimes we had fights. Once over an overflowing laundry basket, another time because she kept eating my yogurt and denying it. But there was never yelling. No threats. No slammed doors. We talked a lot. About the dark stuff. But more and more about the future. One night, we were sitting on the floor watching old true crime documentaries when Michaela turned to me and said, "Do you ever think about helping people like us?" I blinked. Like how? I mean, we have a story people listen to. You write well. You speak clearly. People believe you. I thought about that for a long time. 3 weeks later, I applied for a job at an NGO in Seattle called Safe Wells. They helped women, and sometimes teenagers, who had escaped religiously oppressive homes or cult-like family environments. Their focus was reintegration, trauma recovery, and legal support. I wasn't sure I'd even get an interview, but they called me back. The director's name was Samira Chowdhury. She was sharp, soft-spoken, and ran the place with terrifying efficiency. Her eyes were the kind that made you sit up straighter, not because she was judging you, but because you wanted to live up to them. At the end of the interview, she said, "Why are you here?" I said, "Because I lived through it. And I'm not done speaking." She nodded. "Good answer. We need more women who understand the fire they've walked through." I started as a program assistant. Entry level. Mostly administrative at first, scheduling appointments, organizing intake forms, prepping coffee for group therapy rooms. But I watched, learned, took notes. I saw women walk in with nothing but a duffel bag and a blanket, some with kids. One woman named Hope had escaped from a compound in Idaho. Her father was a preacher with a 30-member congregation living off-grid. She'd been whipped, isolated, starved. She hadn't seen a supermarket until she was 17. She didn't know how to open a checking account. Hope looked like me. Different skin, different history. But I saw myself in her. And I couldn't sit behind a desk anymore. I asked Samira to move me into case support. She didn't hesitate. By the end of my 3rd month, I was attending court hearings with clients, helping file restraining orders, arranging temporary housing. The work was hard. Ugly sometimes. Triggering even. But it was also clarifying. It gave me something Amanda never could. Purpose that wasn't performative. I started a support group inside the NGO called Second Thread. It was for women raised in authoritarian homes under religious control. Not just evangelical, but Catholic, Orthodox, Mormon, and even more fringe movements. I didn't run the group. I just held the space, lit the candles, made the tea, and shared when I needed to. One of the women, Autumn, had escaped from a purity cult in Texas where girls weren't allowed to speak to men outside their family until marriage. Another, Clara, was raised by quiverful parents. No birth control, no independence, just obedience. She'd had 13 siblings. I listened. I helped. I healed. But not all at once. Some nights, Michaela would find me crying in the shower. Other times, I'd walk past a church and feel my throat close up. Once, I saw a car that looked like Amanda's old minivan and had to sit down on the curb until I could breathe again. Healing is like excavation. You find bones you didn't know were there. But I had support now. Kenda called every Friday. She was still in Ohio, pregnant with her first baby. We laughed about names, argued over cribs, and promised each other that our kids would never feel what we did. Bryson FaceTimed once a month. He was quiet as always, but steady. He started writing a book about his life, or maybe just a long essay. I told him I'd help edit it when he was ready. And Michaela, she was my anchor. We joked about getting matching tattoos that said, "We survived Amanda" in Latin. I half wanted to do it. One day, a package arrived at our apartment. No return address. Inside was a single photo. A blurry picture of me as a child in a Sunday dress, standing next to Amanda outside a church. She was smiling. I wasn't. There was a note scribbled on the back. "I hope you feel powerful now." No name. No signature. Just the same handwriting I knew from birthday cards and threatening letters stuffed under my bedroom door. I burned it in the sink. And I never looked back. I started signing emails as Jamie Marrow, then my tax forms, then the legal stuff. It became natural eventually. My old name started to feel like someone else's, a ghost I'd buried. I got my first paycheck under my new name and cried in the break room. Not because of the money, because it was the first thing I'd ever earned with my name. My story wasn't perfect. It was scarred, cracked, marked with every kind of emotional wreckage you could think of. But for once, it was mine. And Amanda had no part in it. Not anymore.